Hey, Larry.
What's up, Chris?
Should I smash that like button?
Smash that like button.
Yeah, I figured I would. So today we set up your development environment.
Subscribe.
That is not subliminal. That
Subscribe.
is very unsubliminal.
Okay.
Anyway, we set up your development environment, and figured it would be a good excuse to make a video about Python virtual environments. So what did we learn today?
Well, we learned a lot. We learned primarily
Uh-huh.
from a high level, like 50,000, 60,000 feet,
How many feet?
70,000. We're in the
That many?
outside of the atmosphere. 70,000.
Is that outside of the atmosphere?
I think so.
Okay.
It's pretty high.
All right.
We learned that Python is always Python, but it's not always Python.
Okay, we're just going to move on here. So anyway, Python virtual environments. First of all, sorry, Windows people. This is about Unix, so like Linux, MacOS, whatever. And unless you use WSL, you're going to kind of be out of luck. If you'd like to see a Windows native specific version of this, I can probably do it. Maybe we'll see what happens. I don't use Windows that much, so
Someone should send, if they send you a comment asking you, hey,
Yeah.
this is pretty good, but I'd like to know how to do it
yeah,
on Windows.
yeah, exactly. So I've noticed a lot of gnashing of teeth from various people about Python virtual environments, and it seems like a fairly simple topic, but man, people just get wrapped around the axle when they consider them, and I realize like, okay, like I just take a lot of stuff for granted, and we spent like 2 hours today,
We did.
or maybe even longer, like figuring it out. And so Larry's like kind of a journeyman Unix person, and I'm not. So in relating it to Larry, I was like, okay, well, this is probably grist for some people who are either new to Unix, or maybe they're not new to Unix, but they just haven't thought about this stuff. So when I was a kid, small, like 14, 15 years old, I wasn't that small when I was 14, 15.
2.5 feet tall.
2.5. Well, damn.
Probably taller than that.
Yeah. But I was totally fascinated by like, me and Larry have known each other for 40 years. So he would know that I was fascinated with
You're like,
stuff.
wow,
These computers are cool. Yeah.
this Unix stuff.
Yeah. But it wasn't like I had a Commodore 64 and then I had Commodore Amiga, and whatever. Doesn't really matter. But I was always fascinated with operating systems and shells and stuff like that. I always felt like Zork to me, like playing a game. And over the years I used a lot of different ones, and so I failed a lot. I did not
In school?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You were there. Yes.
Try on error,
I once asked the algebra teacher, are we ever going to use this?
I think she yelled at you.
She did.
Mrs. Kopak, are you listening to this?
Yeah. But so, over time, the last 35 years, I think I've gained enough knowledge to not be not be mystified by Unix, and as a result, as like a 12th order sort of thing, I'm not mystified by Python virtual environments. So, Python virtual environments, as we'll see a little bit later, it's possible to have multiple versions, multiple installations of Python on your system. It's actually fairly common, although a lot of people don't know it. They don't know they have multiple versions of Python on their system.
I know now.
Yep. And how many versions do you have?
I have 2 versions right now. I think I have 3 actually.
I think you have
3. Yes.
Yeah. And so what we want to do today is get Larry set up so that he could make a virtual environment for reasons we'll discuss later. But before we got him set up with a virtual environment, we installed. He had 2 versions, then we installed a third. Right? Is that how that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And because I have a Mac,
Right.
you might be getting to this later. Might be jumping ahead. Might be jumping the gun on this.
Yeah.
But Mac comes with Python installed right
Yeah, it does. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's useful even if you only have one version of Python installed on your system to know where your Python is coming from. So, we talked about the path environment variable.
Yes.
So I'm gonna start to type something here, and note that what I'm typing here is on Linux, but these concepts apply to Mac OS as well. So I don't think there's any difference until we get later on in this video. So if I echo $path, I should probably make that bigger. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Why not? We can see I am using Nix OS, so we have some very strange entries in this path thing. But note that path is a string. This whole string here that will highlight, but it is actually a sequence of path of directories that are searched when you type a command. So the first path on here, the first directory on here is this one. It's Nix store blah 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 blah. Oops, sorry, that's actually not the first one. This is the first one. Then here's the second one. Bin. And so you can tell that these are separated by these colons here. So I have, what, 4 of them? 5 of them. Five elements on my path. And path is actually an environment variable. So the way to print your environment variables is type env. That's these are variables that are you can set yourself, but as we'll see later, they're munged by various things. But there's a bunch of them. There's all kinds of environment variables by default. Look at that. Oh wow, that's a lot. But the way to get just the path one is to echo $path. So any environment variable you should do echo $, that environment variable will tell you what it is. So how does this relate to where my Python is coming from? Well, on this system, I'm going to type Python 3. And what does that do, Larry?
That shows you where your Python is.
Right. And so my Python is at this location. Run current system. Now, of course, I'm using Nix OS. Yours is going to be different if you're using some other, Mac OS or some other Linux or whatever. But that's when I type Python 3 in the terminal, that's what is found, this path. I used to do something like this. I used to do which Python 3, and that actually works in this setup, but I found out today that it's better to do type Python 3 because reasons. So yeah, you don't have to know that when shell aliases are involved. If I have an alias to Python, that doesn't work so well. So anyway,
you didn't use an argument in there. Are you gonna? Am I jumping ahead again? But you didn't use an argument like a -a or anything,
right? Yeah, I didn't. Let's see if I was smart enough to. Yeah. So I actually have multiple. I think I have multiple versions of Python in here. So if I type -a Python 3. Python 3. No, I only have one in here. But if I SSH to a Mac that I have laying around here, I think I have multiple versions on there. Type A. Yeah. So I have 4 versions of Python on that Mac. So you can see that this works the same on Linux and Mac OS. So anyway, that's how you find out where your Python is installed. And there's a bit of a weirdness in Python land that Python is called Python 3 these days as opposed to Python, although both work in this case. The reason that there's both a Python and a Python 3 is that Python 3 is the new version of Python, although it's quite old at this point. It's been around since 2008. But before that, and still currently, actually, I mean, even though it's technically deprecated and not supported anymore, there are still programs that run on Python 2. But Python 2 is incompatible with Python 3. So it's best to use Python 3 just to be just to be specific about which version of Python you want to use. If you are developing new software, you want to use Python 3. So there's no reason to not use Python 3, Python 2 at this point. Usually Python is a symbolic link to Python 3. And sometimes on strange operating systems or older ones, it'll be a symbolic link to Python 2. And it just depends on the operating system you're using. So sometimes Python 3 just doesn't exist at all on UNIX, although, let's see. Is that even true on here? Oop. Oh no. Oh no. Python 3. Oops. It does exist on here. I must be wrong in this particular thing I said. It might not exist. Anyway.
But if you didn't have Python 3, as everybody would know, you'd go to python.org and download it for your operating system.
Well, we don't do that in this video, do we?
Don't we? What else would we do?
Yeah, it's coming. Okay. So, we're going to talk specifically about virtual environments first, but first we're talking about just normal ass Python installs, whatever. Now, as we can see, we can have more than one version of Python install in there. Does that surprise you, Larry?
It doesn't surprise me now.
Did it surprise you before?
Not really.
No?
I knew I had 2 versions installed before.
Did you?
Yeah.
And did you install one yourself?
I installed one myself, yes. But I never realized why. I'm like, why?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. You might say, as I say in here, in the script, which you can't read because it's too small text on the screen.
I can't see that far.
You say, but I don't care about any of this. I don't care. I couldn't care less.
I don't care. I just got to do my job.
That's right. I have one Python.
Yeah.
Why do I need another one?
Yeah. Why? Yeah. I didn't care about it until today when I said, hey, why?
Well, yeah. The whole reason this came up is because you're like, I need to install this course I'm taking. Wants me to install a virtual environment. When I run Python-m venv, it doesn't work.
Yep. Did not work.
Right. And I said, oh, which Python are you running? And you're like, fuck, I don't know. Right?
Right. Well, I thought I knew which version was running. And when I went to check, it didn't tell me the right version.
Right. Which version did you think you were running?
I thought I was running Python 3.
Mm-hmm.
But it kept pointing to when I think it was using which, and it was showing me the older version.
So you knew to use which?
I knew to use which.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, seriously.
No, just because I did look. I did like
oh, you did
I did a Google search and
right.
found it, yeah.
So but when you try to run the command, you want to create a virtual environment and it failed in what way? What did it say?
It said it didn't recognize, or I didn't have VM installed.
Right. So you typed Python space -m
VM. Yep.
And it came back and said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Correct.
And probably it said that because it was trying to invoke Python 2, which doesn't have venv.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I asked you, well, should I just install VM?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you asked me which version I was running.
Right.
And when I looked, even though I thought it was launching Python 3, it was not.
Mm-hmm. So then we just kind of said, okay, like let's just forget about Python virtual environments. We're going to talk about just Unix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how this stuff works. So the thing I just talked about, the path stuff, that has nothing to do with Python. That's all just Unix.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of stopped. And the thing is that even if it had worked, even if your venv thing had worked, well, let me put it this way. I don't know which I don't remember exactly. I'm not entirely positive whether it was because you were using Python 2 or whether it was because the Apple version of Python 3 doesn't ship with venv somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought it was the latter. So, but it sounds like it might have been the former. But the point being that when Apple makes like a release of like Catalina or Monterey or whatever, what are you using?
It's Monterey.
And is that like kind of old or is that?
No, it's new. It's like the 12.6.5 or something.
Okay. Yeah. But when they make that, they actually ship Python with the system. Mm-hmm. So like it's in there and you would think to yourself, okay, well, I'll just use that. It's already installed, right? I mean, totally makes total sense, you know?
Because they must ship the most current thing
Right.
that everybody would want to use. That's what I thought.
Right. But no, right?
Yeah.
Does not work.
I don't think they care.
They don't give a rat's ass.
Well, maybe a rat's.
Well, maybe they give a rat's ass. Yeah.
But not a donkey ass.
Maybe donkey ass, too. I mean, they could give it
An ass donkey? It's,
I mean, something.
Yeah.
They'll give some sort of ass.
They'll give something.
But you got to think of this from a perspective of the people. Of the people who write the operating system, right?
Yes.
So why do you think it didn't work? And why when I say like you got to think about it from the perspective of the people. What am I
For the people that are shipping it?
Yeah.
They don't care because they might have some other old program or something that they're shipping and all they need is the older version.
Yeah.
They're not really concerned about what you might do with Python, which is like seems sort of backwards to me, but it's just I know that about other Apple things too. Like they only care about it for their purposes specifically.
Yeah, we actually tried to report a bug in their automation thing, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And
For
then-
some
okay.
automation problem with the latest iPhone, latest operating system, and they said, yeah, well, it's not.
We're like, we're developers, and they're like, yeah.
We're not interested. We're like, yeah, this is a bug. This doesn't work. They're like, yeah, it doesn't work. Thanks.
Right. So the thing about when the vendor ships Python with a system, they use Python. They're not shipping it so that you can use it. They're shipping it so that they can use it. And what that means is that they're not concerned whether removing it. They could remove it. You know what I mean? Maybe they don't need it anymore. Maybe they rewrite their whatever it is in some other language, and they just remove Python because they don't need it anymore. Or you could potentially mess up your system if you pip installed something into that system environment or something. You know.
So you wouldn't want, like in the Mac case, you wouldn't want to go and remove the old version because it might be used somewhere.
Right. I'm not even sure how you do it, to be honest with you. I mean, you'd have to work pretty hard. You could do it.
You could screw it up real good.
Yeah, you could screw it up real good, but
you probably bad idea to do it. Just leave it. Leave it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what uses that stuff, but you could mess up potentially, like, I don't know, like your settings or something, like MacOS. That might actually be implemented in Python. I don't really know. I don't use MacOS that much. I mean, I have a MacBox, but I don't use it that much. So there's sort of this idea, I think a lot of people have it, and maybe you had some of it before we did that stuff today, is like it's a Highlander mentality, like there can only be one, you know what I mean, like only one version of Python. Maybe you didn't have it so much because you already knew which and all that stuff, but maybe at some point you're like
grabbing the script so I can read what's going on here.
Yeah. Highlander mentality, yeah. That's Melinda. She's a token woman here.
She's Robin Quivers.
Oh. So, there can be more than one. If you install your own, it's usually more up to date. You're not like behind the times. You can avoid messing up your own system if you screw that up somehow. And also you can avoid them messing you up if they make changes to it by installing another copy of Python. So I know there's a long way. We're getting to virtual environments, but this is just starting out here.
But you could install many versions.
Yeah. Yeah, you can install Python 3.10, 3.9, 3.10, 3.11, whatever, 2.7, 5.7, 5.6.4. You want to? There's no such version, but
and I bet there's a way that you could use them all at the same time.
Is step 3 profit?
Yes.
Okay. So we're getting virtual environments, but we're going to talk about how to install another copy of Python. And when I say copy, that's actually a very specific and very, very deliberate word here. I'm not talking about installing another version of Python, because you could potentially install the same version of Python. Like if the one that's already on the system is 3.11, you can install another 3.11. It's just not It's just not in the same place. So it's particularly important on macOS to install. I think anyway. Although I'm not. I think now I'm a little suspicious that I didn't understand what was happening on your machine. I thought VN didn't exist in Python 3 on your machine, but maybe it does. But I think in general on any system, it really doesn't matter. You should kind of install your own version. So
I think if someone knows for a fact that it does exist, they should comment and let me know.
yes, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. So Apple seems to tend to be a little more aggressive about like making changes to their like. So if you upgraded the next version of macOS, it might be a totally different version of Python. Maybe
Could
be, and then what you put in it might not work anymore because it's like might be incompatible with that version or something. You know,
But you'd want to like I'm always wanting to use the latest one or whatever version other people are using that I'm working with.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to like if I'm taking a class or doing something I'm following along, and they're saying, well, you need version 3 dot something, or I'm using 3 something. I'd want to have that. I want to be using that, or else there's the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did we get another Python installed today, Larry?
Well, I think we pip installed it.
No, not at all.
Oh wait, I think I used my UNIX package manager.
You did.
We did.
That's right. You did.
Yeah.
How was that hard?
Wasn't hard.
No.
Because I watched a tutorial on how to do it.
So yeah, that is the way I recommend to get another Python installed. There are multiple ways to do it. There's another thing called Homebrew that you can use, but I only go into Nix here because
it's easy.
It's easy, and it works both on macOS and like Ubuntu or Red Hat or any other Linux. So it's just easier to describe it in the video. So I'm just going to go here to show folks how that's done. Got to copy this thing. Copy. Oh, hell, pet surgery pricing.
Home pet surgery.
Oh, yeah. Do it yourself. Oh, yeah. Just hold still.
Meow.
All right. So this is how you install Nix, the package manager, on macOS. It's pretty easy, right? This is typically a terrible idea to just pipe some random shit on the internet to shell, but it does work, and I trust people at Nix, so it's not that big of a deal.
Is that disinformation.com or is that?
Yeah, that is RussianDisinfo.com.
Okay.
And on Linux, you can do the same thing. There's different, I guess on Linux, like there's multiple ways to do it. I'm not sure which one. I very rarely use Nix on Ubuntu or Arch or any of that stuff because I don't need to. I can install multiple versions of Python together without doing it. So, in any case, I suggest if you need to get another version of Python installed, either on Linux or on Mac, for the purposes of the video, because it's hard to describe it otherwise, use Nix. Install Nix, and then use Nix to install Python. And so we can see that I'm going to SSH to a Mac that I have here. And we can see that I have a Python installed. And previously, what I did was I used this nixenv IA Python 3.11 thing. Although not really. I didn't really do that because I'm faking this a little bit. I did it a different way, but it doesn't matter. But what did you say, Melinda?
She said, say it. This is ASMR. ASMR Python install.
So if when you do that, when you use this nixenv IA Nix packages Python 3.11 thing, it winds up inside of users, and in my case, Chris M, that's my username, and Nix profile bin. And oops, let me just ls normally. So I use Nix on this system to install Emacs, FFmpeg, and Python. So there's the Python. And after you get it installed, in order to install pip, which is the way you install pip is the way you install Python packages from pypy.org, you have to do something like this, which is in Python m ensure pip. That'll work. And that's when you're cd'd in this Nix profile directory. I'm going to talk about what that means in a second. Right. Yeah. So this directory is not on my path, which is a bit of an issue, but we'll talk about that in a second. So now I've installed pip into my global Python. We still haven't even talked about virtual. So
Not yet.
we haven't done it yet.
We're getting there.
But now we have this Python that is all ours. We don't even have to like this. Its only purpose in life. Its only reason to exist. It's like a. Can I say manservant? Can I say manservant?
Person servant.
Person servant?
Yeah. You can say whatever you want, but.
Did you know that Nixon used to have a manservant?
I did not.
His name was Manolo.
Mm-hmm.
He called him his manservant too. Anyway.
Back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah. So now, notice when I type, I told you before you could find all your Pythons by typing Python, type A, Python 3. Yes, I do have it on my path. It is there. But it is the last thing in my path. So when I type Python 3 right now, it's going to use the first thing in my path, which is Python 3.9.1. That makes total sense. That is the version of Python that ships with macOS.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least Catalina, which is this thing. We don't want to use that one, do we?
We do not.
No.
We want a newer one.
Yes, we
Mhm.
do.
Got to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
The Python Joneses.
Right. So, I say here that the Python you installed via Nix will likely be on the path before your system Python. Untrue. No, it's not. It's last. But if it isn't, you can use the full path to this Python, which is users. Oops. It's users, Chris M. Nix profile, bin, pip, Python 3, or whatever. Am I trying to invoke pip? Let me read the script.
Python
3, okay. So I'm trying to invoke Python 3. You can either do that, like that. That is totally equivalent to doing something like, since I'm, if I type cd and then hit enter here, what that is, it CDs me to my home directory. So if I do pwd onion users Chris M print working directory, that users Chris M Nix profile bin Python 3 is totally equivalent to typing from my home directory Nix profiles. Oops, sorry, got to put the / in front here. Nix profile bin Python 3, totally the same. Or if I'm cd like to the root directory for whatever stupid reason, I can do users, / users Chris M Nix profile bin Python 3. All this is well, it doesn't really matter. I didn't type Python 3, but it is the same thing. So unlike when we're using the path, we talked about the path before.
We did.
What is the difference here, Larry? Why does it invoke, like when I type this whole path out instead of just like typing Python 3? What is the difference? Why does it invoke that Python?
Because one way it's invoking the global Python, which
is invoking the first Python 3 it finds on the path, right?
Okay. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Which is global, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is what?
It's invoking the one at that directory or at that level there.
Right. Inside of that particular thing. So before we installed Python into NIX, it didn't exist, so it wasn't there. But now that it is, great. Okay, wow, we are we're almost talking about virtual environments now.
Almost. It's
Now
coming
at
up.
this point, what I could do, Larry, if I wanted to, is I could go into. I am master of my domain.
Yes, you are.
I can go into Nick's profile. Oops. I could do bin, and I could do pip. Is that true? Pip. Does that exist? No. What the? Did I not just? Oh, that's right. Because when I did ensure pip, it gets installed into the local bin pip. I'm sorry about this, folks. This is excuse me. This is an incompatible. Pip doesn't ship with Python, but pip is the way that you get other software installed. And it would. I'm going to not rant about why this is the case. Larry suggested that I describe why this is.
You should.
I said it was too mean.
It was too mean, but it's a pretty good story. You could either tell it now or tell it on another
No.
video. People might want to know. What's the story about
I'll
Pip?
be canceled.
What's the story about Pip?
I will be canceled if I say that.
I don't know. People want to know.
All right, you leave it in the comments. I will.
The truth about Pip?
The truth about Pip. Yeah. But in any case, I'm sorry that this is different. This is a different place, but the pip that we installed into our virtual environment isn't in our virtual environment directory. And why is that? Because reasons that if I said them, that would sound very mean. It would sound
controversial.
It would sound mean. There would be drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People will get upset.
Yeah. But if I want to install something into my this global Python, we haven't even started. We still not talking about virtual environments.
Not yet. We're getting there. We're building to it.
Do install pip. Oops. Pip. Not pip 3. Oops. I want to do this. A little bit. Don't. Install requests. Pip 3. Why? Yeah. So that's perfectly reasonable. Now if I invoke my Python inside of here, my let's see, invoke Python inside there and import requests. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how you now. Okay, we're finally at a point where we talk about virtual environments. We are done with our now. Why, Larry, would you want a virtual environment? You have a perfectly reasonable setup here. You can install anything you wanted to. It's not. We install requests. We can install anything else we want. What is the added benefit of a virtual environment?
A virtual environment?
Mm-hmm.
You can make sure that you have the same environment at different places.
You can make multiple projects that don't conflict with each other. Right?
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Better than I would have said. Better than I did say.
Well, I mean, what you said was true as well, but
so multiple projects that wouldn't conflict with each other.
Right. So sometimes when you get down in the weeds in really specific projects, some projects will require specific versions of things that you install via pip. Like it'll require version 1.1.1 or something like that. And if you install a different version into there, it won't work.
Mm-hmm.
But some other project will require 1.1.2 of the thing and totally mutually exclusive requirements. So a virtual environment is just a way to fool the system into thinking that you have multiple Python installations, global installations in there so that they can coexist with each other. So
like the installation that you want in that particular environment. You wouldn't necessarily need multiple Python installations in that one virtual environment, or would you?
No, yeah. A virtual environment is really just an another way to it is really it fools the system into thinking that you've installed Python multiple times in different locations.
Mhm.
So when you make a virtual environment, it's as if you installed a whole new copy of Python in some other place, usually in your home directory somewhere, you know.
Okay.
And how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I install a virtual environment?
Well, it's tricky.
It's not.
There's process.
Well, it's what did the whole thing that we did today it
I'm
was
looking through the script here.
it was as a result of it not working.
Right.
Right.
It did not work.
It did not work.
Well, many things didn't work.
Uh-huh.
So I couldn't install. I didn't have VM installed.
Right. Yeah.
So I had to install VM with
Well, you install a new copy of Python.
new copy of Python that had VM
Yeah.
in it already.
So the way we make one of these virtual environments, I'm going to see my projects directory now.
Can I just interject a comment?
Absolutely.
That looks like someone typed up on a typewriter. I don't know whatever font you used
Uh-huh.
on that, but it says
No, it's a typewriter.
okay.
No, it's
Because-
a
I mean, it looks like- that's what it looks like. That's what I'm like, what the hell is this?
So the way I want to make a virtual environment is I want to do python-m VM, right?
Yes.
Right. But I don't want to use the system Python. And what I want to do is I want to say UNIX profile bin Python and mvm. I'm going to do test 1 2 3. That's the name of the virtual environment. It's going to create a directory. The reason I did instead of typing, I'm going to comment this out right now. The reason I didn't do just this Python mvm is because that would use the system Python. If I did that right now,
Or the global one.
The
Not
global
called
one.
global, yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I want to use the other one. Oh hell. Mvm test 1 2 3. So that is going to create a virtual environment. Now, if I ls here, you can see it created a test 1 2 3 directory. What is that test 1 2 3 directory?
That is virtual environment.
That is correct. You are correct, sir.
Correct.
Correct. And we can tell it's a virtual environment because
Because it has the file
pym.
pym
Right.
VM config
Yep. That is right.
or
That is
CFG.
right. So the cool thing about this is that now we can use the Python that's inside of here to install stuff. As a matter of fact, instead of doing that immediately, I'll just show you that, like, if I invoke that Python, the Python that's inside of here, you remember how I installed requests before into the global one?
I remember.
If I try to import requests, it doesn't work.
It didn't work.
That's because this virtual environment is totally independent of the global one. And we don't have a request installed as far as this is concerned. The global one does, and this is based on the global one, but it is not. It is not. It is isolated here. So it's just a normal directory. We can go out here, and if we want to, we could just delete it. It's gone. Just get rid of it.
Mhm.
And now there's no such thing. We start all over again. We don't have to reinstall Python. We have to find crap on our file system that we can't delete, or we need to use sudo or some other crazy stuff. It's all under our control. So it's quite useful. So now if I go in, the corollary to this is if I go into here and do create a virtual environment, I'm recreating the same one that I just deleted, and go into here and I do bin pip install, let's say, I don't know, what else is there? I don't know, pyramid. Right. I install Pyramid inside of the virtual directory. If I invoke the Python that is the global Python, which happens to be in UNIX profile bin Python, I try to import Pyramid, it does not work. And that's because stuff installed in the global environment doesn't affect the stuff installed in the virtual environment does not affect the global environment.
It's independent.
Totally independent.
It's its own domain.
But if I invoke this Python, it does work. So, yeah, you get the idea. So that is all. That is the entirety of how virtual environments work. The one thing that people trip up over, and this is why I call this video demystifying things, is that there's this sourceable file that is called activate that most people use.
Activate.
Mm-hmm.
Activate.
Activate. And a lot of people say, hey, you made a virtual environment, but you didn't activate it. So how are you using it? Like, how does that happen? And the answer is that you don't need to activate a virtual environment. If you know how paths on a file system work, the only thing activate does is it changes the path. When I do echo path like that, if I do source bin activate like that, which is what the docs tell you to do for virtual environment.
And the docs and the tutorials, a lot of them will say you
them.
have to do this.
Everything.
Yep.
Everything tells you this. They're like, you got to do this. You don't need to at all. You just saw that I successfully invoked the thing and installed some software. I didn't do activate. There's no activate involved anywhere. But if I do invoke it, you see this changes. And now if I do echo path, all it did was inject this test123 bin in front of everything else on my path. That was the only thing it did. But if I type Python, it will indeed invoke the virtual Python's Python or virtual environment's Python, but it is totally unnecessary. When at the command line, if you type something that has a slash in it, Larry, what happens?
That has a slash, it will.
Or actually, doesn't have a slash in it. That's better.
If it doesn't have a slash, it'll in the virtual environment. It'll just use what's in the virtual environment.
Nope. This is independent of virtual environments. Just like if I typed like, I don't know, like some other command that had nothing to do with Python, like I don't know, ffmpeg or something like that. If it doesn't have a slash in it, what it does is it looks up
In the path?
in the path.
Yes.
Right. So this has nothing to do with Python. This is all about Unix. This is how this works. But if I have a slash in it and I do bin ffmpeg and there is no ffmpeg in bin, it's going to look in the current bin directories. If I say ./bin is looking in the current directory for a bin directory, and then I have inside of there some stuff that has to do with Pyramid mostly. But I could, if I had installed ffmpeg into this virtual environment, which I couldn't because it's not a Python thing, but I do have Python 3 in there. Oops, bin Python 3. It'll work. So the way that the point is that when you type something in command line that has a slash in it, it does not look in path. It ignores path entirely, and it says this guy knows what he's doing. He wants to invoke something specific on the file system, and that's the reason that activate is suggested, because it assumes that people are too dumb to know that they need to type bin Python instead of Python, and that's it. And that's all. That's all there is to Pythons, or to virtual environments and invoking Python.
I'm demystified.
So you can use activate. Yeah, undemystified. That's how it works. Don't need to use activate. It is if you find it too magical, you don't need to use it. You can use it if you like, and if that fits your brain better, It just, if you have multiple virtual environments on your system, it gets a little tiresome. There's also various things where like it'll activate it if you CD into that directory in there. But me and Larry didn't do any of that today. We didn't activate anything. We
Just use it.
just used it.
No need to go through that step.
Right. And because it's useful and eventually necessary to understand how this works under the hood, this is how it works under the hood. To know that you can get along without activate, you have to know that eventually, or you're going to be in trouble when activate breaks. You're going to stop what you're doing. I mean, it's unlikely that it's going to break, but sometimes things go weird. Things get weird and they break. So knowing how it works under the hood is super useful. Okay. So you asked me at some point how can I tell if I'm using a virtual environment?
How can you tell?
How can you tell?
How can I tell if we're using a virtual environment?
How can you tell? How do you know? Well, Larry, if I type Python here, what's going to happen? It's going to search the path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm in Activate right now, it's going to actually enter my virtual environments Python. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to type exit. I'll get back out to. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Projects test 1 2 3 in Python. If I'm inside of the Python interactive shell,
Okay, sit here.
type import sys.path. We can see that the path. Why does it have test 1 2 3 on the path? What? Okay, this is why you shouldn't use activate, because now I'm very confused. Why is that happening? How do I deactivate a virtual environment? Oh God,
We're going off the rails.
That's not good. Let me see. Echo path. Is it because I'm CD to this directory? I bet it is. Oh no, it's because I invoked the virtual environments Python. Okay, sorry folks. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this. Import sys.path. There's the last. This is a Python list, and the last element in the list is what you want to look at. If it doesn't have the virtual environments directory anywhere in it, you're not using a virtual environment. You're using the system Python. However, if you CD into a virtual environment and invoke its Python, and you do import sys.path, you'll see that this is my virtual environment. This last element on the path, it has the virtual environments directory in it. That is how you know. And that's it. What do you think?
Oh, looks good.
Yeah?
Now you know. So when you know what's going on, it's much easier
Yeah.
once you know what's going on.
Did you feel like you got smarter today?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go drink whiskey now.
And talk to the cat.
And talk to the cat. But anyway, hopefully this helps somebody. I appreciate you guys watching.